observations from someone that was in the big house over the weekend, a little speculation. If there is a D coordinator change, one of the two names you hear in this show might be the new guy in Columbus, and the possibility of an Ohio State-Oregon rematch a month from now. All that and more in this episode of Locked On Buckeyes with Bill Bender from Sporting News.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, November 29th in the year 2021, and today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/lockedonncaa for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. That loss still stings. That loss, watching the game, makes it hurt even worse. But there are still things we can learn from a game like that, from a performance like that. And here to break all of it down is Bill Bender from Sporting News. So sit back, relax. If you're driving, don't relax too much and just enjoy a fun conversation, as enjoyable as it can be, with myself and Bill Bender from Sporting News as we talk about the game and a whole lot more. And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes, it is Bill Bender from Sporting News. He was at the game on Saturday. It was a really ugly game for Buckeye fans to watch. I want to break it all down here with Bill Bender. Bill, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Jay. Thanks for having me on as always. And it's not a good day for Ohio State, but we can get into the reasons why that's not such a bad thing. Now it's been 48 hours, and we can get into that.
Yes, we can. I know the last time you were on the show, you said hopefully you come back on when there's football being played. Football is played on Saturday, an unfortunate end for Buckeye fans. However, that ending, it is what it is. But the Buckeyes didn't really look like the better team and played very soft, as some might say.
That's not a word they like to hear in Columbus. But I think, to me, it came down to a couple things. Michigan had a good game plan and stuck with it. They stuck with Hassan Haskins. They trusted their offensive line. They didn't put Cade McNamara in those third and long situations where Ohio State could get the rush going. They controlled the tempo. And I just told Tim May about this. The feeling I thought, okay, this is going to be a game, was the first drive when Ohio State marched back and Aiden Hutchinson had a sack. I was like, that's a win for Michigan right there. And then when I knew they were going to kind of win the game was coming out of the second half when Ohio State goes 3 and out and Michigan handballs it all the way down the field. So it was eye-opening and in some ways, but there's not – if you're an Ohio State fan saying, saying it was the refs or that was this, no, they got beat straight up.
You mentioned the first drive of the second half where Ohio State goes 3 and out. Were you surprised that Ryan Day ran 3 straight times?
I was surprised, actually, that he didn't stay more committed to the run early in the game. Early in the game. You know the drive where they got Henderson and Williams going? They take it right down the field. Mm-hmm. Henderson, I thought they could have used him a little more in the screen game to offset the Michigan pass rush. But, I mean, it's hard, Jay. When you have 3 NFL receivers that they have, when you have Olave and Wilson made some fantastic catches. Jackson Smith-Jigba needs to be in a Green Bay Packers uniform now for the Super Bowl run this year. That's how good that guy is. So it's hard. And I understand that. But I didn't really question the game plan. They wanted to get the run going. So I didn't really have a problem with that. It's just they didn't get executed.
How did you think the game was going to go going into the game?
I predicted 38-26 Ohio State because my gut reaction when the line came out was that's low. I thought Ohio State would be a 12.5-point favorite based on past results, based on the offense, based on I wasn't sure that I didn't know that it was going to snow I didn't know that you didn't know. It's not an excuse, but it is worth knowing that CJ Stroud was obviously battling the flu, lost his voice. That was a key thing in those false starts because you could actually see it happen. You could see his head move and the ball not get snapped. And some of it was crowd noise, some of it was that. And, that's part of it. But I thought Ohio State would win 38-26, can do the things that they did offensively. I don't think that was bad. It was the defense that just could not stop Michigan's running game.
No, Bill, one thing that stood out to me, and I went back this morning and ended up watching certain portions of the game, the guards, right guard, left guard of Michigan, were able to get to the second level a whole lot easier than most offensive linemen are against Ohio State. Normally you get Steel Chambers, who's able to fly around and quickly get into the backfield to stop runs for very short gains. He wasn't able to do that in this game, which is why we saw those long runs. We saw Blake Corum in the second half break one long one. And I think that second level blocking of Michigan was one thing that other teams in the Big Ten couldn't really do against the Ohio State defense.
Right, and they kept it clean up front. They really did. And then, Stuber talked about that after, and Hassan Haskins and McNamara, that they had this confidence in the running game. I think they were creative too in it, and they kind of saved a couple back pocket Blake Corum plays. Donovan Edwards was active. They bring in McCarthy. They kept Ohio State's defense off balance for 4 quarters. They threw a flea flicker in there. So at some point you have to applaud Josh Gaddis for a great game. Great called it well. And then the back half of that is this was the same formula in so many ways that Oregon used in September. So when something happens to you twice, I think the biggest question with Ohio State now is who's the next defensive coordinator going to be? And it has to be, because they have the resources to do it, $1 million name. You know what I mean? Somebody that is a veteran, knows how to use a Greg Schiano type name is what they're going to need. You know what I mean?
You mentioned it. I've refrained. I told myself I'm going to wait until the end of the season. Ohio State has a bowl game left, but you mentioned a new coordinator. Who do you think might be out? Who do you think might be in? Take it wherever you want to go.
I mean, like a Will Muschamp type name.
Okay.
Somebody of that level. If you have to go to the SEC and get one from there. Because they do that. I think Greg Schiano did a very nice job as the coordinator at Ohio State, and this year was tough. I mean, I think Kerry Combs is an invaluable piece of that program. He is. He's a position coach too. Excellent recruiter, all those kind of things. But they need somebody, Greg Madison was there for a while. They're going to need the big name. And I don't know who that name is. It could come from any Power 5 program. But, look what Oklahoma State did with their defensive coordinator this year. They went from, over the last couple years actually, look what they're on the cusp of a playoff because of a defense that has dominated in the Big 12. So, and that's hard to do because everybody scores in that conference. So I think they need to figure that out. And then if you compare that with the offense they have, you'll be right back in the same spot they were last year.
So it sounds like you're expecting similar success from Ohio State next year that we saw throughout portions of the year, not the entire year, but Ohio State was very successful throughout this year. A couple tweaks, coordinator change, you're thinking that Ohio State will be right back in the same spot next year, competing for the Big Ten, battling with Michigan Thanksgiving weekend?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they'll still be the favorite in the Big Ten. I mean, it's one thing. It is one game. And I know good and bad part of it, like everybody, much was made of like Jim Harbaugh's on third comment or however he worded it, Saturday. I was right there when he did it. That's good for the rivalry. Aiden Hutchinson saying, we heard them saying they're going to hang 100 on him. I would say the same thing in his position. So, and all of those things are good for the rivalry, but the reality is that Michigan still hasn't won in Columbus since 2000. I think I was a sophomore in college. I'm 42 years old now. So it's been a long time. And I think if Michigan wins one there, then it gets real. Because then it's, okay, they can come in our house and beat us, and it's been a long time. So, again, it's good for the rivalry in a lot of ways. I know Ohio State fans never want to hear that, especially, but it's been 10 years, right? And it really does amp the stakes a little bit between Day and Harbaugh. I kind of like that they know if they actually don't like each other, but it's pretty upfront about the volatility in the rivalry, and the rivalry is always better when that's going on.
I do think that it's better for the rivalry. I do think that what we saw over the weekend was a needed wake-up call. Because I do believe that if you go back to the Oregon game, you can even go back to Minnesota, Nebraska, Penn State. There's other games throughout the season where Ohio State had glaring issues or glaring holes that luckily, due to the offense and some good plays on defense at times as well, they were still able to come out victorious. The Oregon game prior to Michigan was the only one where at the time, the offense couldn't do things down the stretch. I think it was 3 drives they could have scored on the latter part of that game. They did not do that. I think this loss, I hate saying this. Sometimes losses like this are what's needed to make needed changes in your program. And it sucks that it came to Michigan. But I think Ryan Day, early tenure as a head coach, only third season, basically 2.5 years he's been coaching at Ohio State. These are the kind of things that you need early as a coach to kind of make the proper adjustments to make you even better in the next 2, 3, even 4 years.
Absolutely. I mean, again, that not always lost. It's not like Ohio State. They're going to go to the Rose Bowl. They're probably going to play, unless Michigan loses to Iowa, they're going to the Rose Bowl, and then they'll play Utah, or they may get the Oregon rematch, and then they can redo it that way. So, yeah, again, I think it is what it is. Alabama had a 2-loss season a couple years ago. They turned around and won the national championship. And Ohio State's that kind of program. Clemson's going to have a 3-loss season. I'm guessing with the talent Clemson has back, they'll come back and win the ACC. You know what I mean? So it's not that big of a deal. I know it's a big deal. I don't want to say it that way. I know it's a 365 days a year big deal. But in terms of the long view of Ryan Day, Ohio State, what's going on, I would not be that concerned.
No, there's no reason to be super concerned. It's just everybody. It's that one time. I don't know. I know you've been covering college football for a very long time. I don't know if you can think about, or if you, off the top of your head, can remember a rivalry where it was dominant as long as Ohio State one-sided was in this rivalry for that long a time. Can you think, off the top of your head, I know this is kind of spur of the moment, can you think of a rivalry that was this one-sided for 10 years?
Not Tennessee, Alabama is the same one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the only other one that really – Virginia Tech was like this for 14 years. But to me, Tennessee, Alabama is the only other one that needs a reignited. And that's on Tennessee. I mean, Florida, Tennessee needs that. And, I think if that happened, then – that game, like when maybe that's just growing up in the 90s. Like when I was growing up in the 90s, you didn't miss Florida, Tennessee, or Tennessee. Tennessee, Alabama wasn't as big because Alabama wasn't as big, but Florida, Tennessee was huge. And, those are two that, but in terms of Ohio State, Michigan, it is a rivalry of swings, but that Ohio State swing was the longest one I've ever seen. And I don't know, and maybe it'll continue, but, I was alive during the Cooper era when it was 2-10-1 Ohio State. This one just lasted longer, and it may continue. I mean, it's what is it now? Let me get it right because I don't want to be wrong. The 18-1, something like that. If you do Tressel's record, Tressel was 9-1, Urban was 7-0 or 8-0, and then Day's 1-1. So 2-17. That's a long swing. I think I got it right.
Wild,
right?
Man.
I have to look up. Was Urban there 7 or 8 years? It's
2012 to 2018.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like Ohio State has lost the grip on the rivalry. They lost a game in which Michigan had a better game plan around Hassan Haskins, who will be like when we look back at this game, and we always tag a name to it, like 2005 Anthony Gonzalez, 2003 Chris Perry. This is the Hassan Haskins game. You could say it's the Aiden Hutchinson game too, but it was, to me, it was the Hassan Haskins game. He ran like a Chris Perry, a Biaka Batuka. He was an amazing force in that game.
Yeah, I mean, you could say Hassan Haskins. He had the 5 touchdowns, and in these moments, it was even the same way when the Michigan State game was earlier in the year. I didn't realize in that moment that Kenneth Walker III had 5 touchdowns. I'm just so mesmerized and amazed at what he's doing on the field. When they say 5 touchdowns on the television, I'm like, wait, he had 5? The same thing was going on in this game against Michigan and Ohio State over the weekend. I had no idea that Hassan Haskins had 5 touchdowns. I knew he was doing amazing things, but the 5 touchdowns that he had, Buckeye fans, and I sure hope this defense next year, and even in the Rose Bowl, they take that, and it's kind of like a wake up call, pride. Something sticks up and it says, "Wait, our run defense was way better than this all year long. We have one more game left. We're not letting anybody else run on us to close out the season."
Yeah, and in past matchups, Ohio State running backs have been huge. In Ann Arbor, Ezekiel Elliott, J.K. Dobbins twice, actually. And so that's why I was kind of going in thinking, well, TreVeyon Henderson is going to be the key player in this game. And he played well. I mean, he had a bunch of yards. But Haskins kind of took over. And like you said, it's that run defense. It's the talent that they have on the defensive line. It was Michigan's ability to – it seemed like Haskins would get to the second level, make one cut, and it just turned into big gain after big gain after big gain, and their offensive line was able to do that. And then on the other side, Michigan's defensive line kept the linebackers clean and was able to get off the edge, and the corners gave up plays, which was going to happen. But here's something else that stands out. Ohio State had 2 scoring drives in the second half, but I think one was like 17 plays and one was 13 plays. They weren't 5 plays, 2-minute drives that we're used to seeing. And Michigan made them work and earn everything they got.
Anything else stick out to you from this game before we wrap up this show?
No, the atmosphere. I've been to every one since Harbaugh took over. So I've been there to everyone since 2015. And this one, they just felt different right off the go. And I mentioned that earlier. It felt like, they bring Charles Woodson out. They were ready to go. In past years, you kind of, and I always judge by what the stadium looked like there. I've been to Michigan, Ohio State games up there where it was 60-40, 50-50 even. This one was 80-20, 90-10 Michigan fans. So, again, it breathes life into the rivalry. It should be a lot of fun in future seasons. And that's what I grew up on, and that's what I want to see anyway. So like I said, some good can come from a loss, and you probably got people swearing at me right now, and that's fine. But it will make this rivalry better, and it makes it that much better when you turn around and beat them in Columbus if that's what happens next year.
I think so as well. Bill Bender, this has been fun, man. Kind of a 48-hour after reaction to the game over the weekend. Let everyone know they can catch you on Twitter, and then also where they can read some of your work as well.
Yeah, I'm at BillBender92 on sportingnews.com, and we'll have all the conference championship stuff rolling this week. I'm really excited about it. So who had Cade McNamara versus Stetson Bennett in the championship game in August? I don't think anybody did, but I think that's what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to get a Georgia-Michigan man ball run on each other game. I think it's going to happen.
Who you got? Little early prediction for the game. Who you got?
I think Georgia will win the national championship. I think the Final Four will be Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati. I think Notre Dame could backdoor in as the number 4 if Alabama loses by 10-14 and Oklahoma State struggles against Baylor, which I think could happen.
I wonder, and I was curious if Oklahoma State finds a way to win the Big 12, and let's say they do it by 10-14 points, and they look not so much struggling the entire time. I wonder if the committee will put Oklahoma State in because they have the conference championship, not Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is 11-1, and they're not in the conference.
They could, and that's one of the. So we've got a couple minutes here. We can figure this out. Here's what. Let's play the game. Georgia wins, Michigan wins. Those 2 are in. We don't have much debate. Cincinnati wins. I think they're a solid 3 because they'll be undefeated. They get them in. They finally sit. So 4. Depending on how many points Alabama loses that game by, let's say it's like 7-10. You put a 2-loss Bama team in, a 1-loss Notre Dame, or that Oklahoma State. That's a little bit messy. Yeah. And I think there is some drama to it. Oklahoma State will have a chance because they'll have back-to-back top 10 wins. Alabama could have a chance if they play this ridiculous instant classic with Georgia, which could happen. And as I've said for 3 weeks, Notre Dame could get in because they have gold helmets. And they've also played very well since the Cincinnati loss. So I'll give them credit.
Yeah, I wish I missed the days of Notre Dame playing just the straight independent schedule, not the 5 wannabe ACC schedule. Right. To me, I think that hurts their schedule. If they went back to their old way of scheduling, I think Notre Dame's a top 4 team right now because they're playing better competition. Even if they have that one loss to Cincinnati earlier in the year, I think Notre Dame's a solidified, solid top 4 team because they're playing really good ball right now.
Sure, man, and they've won every game by double digits. The running game is really good, so I absolutely believe all that. I think they've got a chance to. They're a solid team. I think Jack Cohn surprised me with how he's settled into the starting role. Their offensive line gelled. Their defense is playing better. They've got a Pickerington kid on the perimeter, and Lorenzo Styles. We like him. So, yeah, they're a really good football team.
Oh, yeah, Lorenzo is there. I forgot about that. I should have known. I know Sonny just committed to Ohio State, and everyone's like, well, he's going to Notre Dame. But it's like, well, he just committed to Ohio State. I was surprised by that. I thought he would have gone to South Bend with his brother, but staying in state, going to the school that his dad went to, it all works out for him.
Yeah, for sure. So, and we'll watch this recruiting, but it's been fun. It's been a fun season. I do like the idea of a college football playoff for 1 year without Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State.
Yeah.
We could see something a little bit different. Georgia's every one of those programs that we mentioned, like Georgia trying to break a drought that goes back to 80. Notre Dame's is 88. I think Oklahoma State, I'm mad I don't know this. It's either 36 or 40. It's in the 40s as an Oklahoma and A&M. And then Michigan 97 and Cincinnati obviously is going to be the team that everybody roots for or roots against. You know, some of the established people are. There's people, the elitist out there that are going to root against them. So it's fun. It's been a fun season.
Bill Bender, this has been fun. Thank you for coming back on Locked On Buckeyes. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks so much, Jay. I appreciate you.